Hello folks, my name is Matthew Peterson and welcome to episode number 3 of building your Canvas application in Microsoft Teams. If you have not watched episode 1 and 2 and you're trying to build that end-to-end solution with me, because this is going to be about a 10 episode series or so, look at the description of the video below to see episodes 1 and 2. If you're just here to say, how do I make galleries within Teams, what do galleries do, formulas, how do I make them work, then don't worry about watching episode 1 and 2, just watch what we have going. So in this episode, we are going to be putting into our application that we've been building, our gallery for our students, and learning how do we change what is being shown in the gallery, how can I do searching over the gallery, etc. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the application. Alright, so I'm over here in Microsoft Teams, and the first thing we're going to do is, again, I'm going to click on Power Apps over on the left-hand side, and then I'm going to head up here to the Build section. In the Build section, this will show me all of my environments that currently have, my Teams environments that have applications in them. And so I'm going to come on over here to my YouTube App in a Team series. And then once I come on over here, my application will pop up, we'll click on the application, and then we'll start editing it. So we're going to click on that student check-in application that we were building in episodes 1 and 2. And when we left off in this video, in episode 2, we had started to put in our very first gallery, but we didn't make many modifications to it. Well, now's the time we're going to start making those modifications and learning how this gallery actually works. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my gallery over either in my tree view, or I could have selected it right here on the application screen. And let me zoom in a little bit here for us. And I'm going to start off by renaming my gallery. I like to rename my controls for easier reference to know what I am working with. I can use them in my formulas. So I like to call this Gal Browse Students, because that's the whole idea. I want to browse all of my student records because we can see that my data source is hooked into the students table that was built in this Dataverse environment for Teams. Now the next thing we can do with galleries is over on the right hand side we have a layout. And the layout is going to tell you how many controls that you want to display within the gallery itself. Right now I've got 3. Well, I don't have any images of my students at this time, so the image title and subtitle layout is not really the best thing for me. So when I click that drop down, I'm going to choose just title and subtitle to start off with. And when I click title and subtitle, we can now see that on this gallery, we only now have 2 controls. One way to know that as well is in my tree view. If I expand out the gallery, I see subtitle and title. Those are the 2 controls that are being returned. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit easier to read. So I'm going to come up to my background color, and I'm going to choose white right now for that background color. Now right now I have the whole gallery selected, and technically within a gallery you really have 2 main parts for the design. You have the whole gallery, and then we have what's called the template cell. Now to get into the template cell, we have 2 options. I can click on anything within the first row of the template cell, or if I want to make modifications to that whole template cell as well, I can hit that black pencil icon. Now notice when I hit that black pencil icon, I can now change the height of it, the width of it, and everybody else is going to follow suit. So I'm just going to keep it right here for now. Now the next thing we can do with galleries is decide what information is going to be returned. So with the whole gallery selected, I'm going to come on over here to my properties panel on the right hand side, and underneath fields it says edit. If I click on edit, these are those 2 controls, subtitle and title. Now if I want the subtitle to not be the first name, but I want to use one of my other columns, then I can choose it here. So if I want the student email, now we see that the student email is being returned. Now do note though, with this field selection there are some limitations. Some of your column data types will not be shown in that drop down. These are typically your choice columns, your lookup columns, and so sometimes you won't see the column you want in the drop down. That's where you really want to know how to write your formulas. So moving forward, I'm going to use formulas to return everything that I want within inside of this gallery. So let's take a look at the first one. I'm going to come up here and click on the title. Now notice if I tried to click on the title control in row 2 or under, it selects the whole gallery. If I want to mess with the value being returned, I have to select the title in the template cell. or I could have selected title over in the tree view. So now that I have the title selected, let's take a look, I'll close out my fields panel, at the formula being written for the text property of this title. And it says this item.student identifier. So this is like my student ID column. Well, if I don't want that, I'm going to remove student identifier, and I'm also going to remove the period so that I can get the IntelliSense to come back in. So this item dot. Now, notice when I do this item dot, think of the function this item is saying, for this record, what do you want returned? And because I'm doing this in the template cell, it's going to execute through every other record that's being returned within the gallery. So let's say that I want the first name and the last name. So if I type in here this item dot first name, and then I just tab it over, notice I'm getting the first names. Picture perfect. However, what if I also would like to have the last name returned? Well, I could put in a brand new label and put it right next to this title label, or I can write a formula to where I concatenate or I smush together multiple values. And in order to do that, we use the ampersand or Shift 7 on your keyboard. So this item dot first name, and I'm also going to say for this record, so another this item dot last name. So now I'm returning the first name and the last name, but obviously I would love to have a space in between these two names being returned. So anytime you want a hard code text to be printed, we started off with a double quote. So I'm going to do a double quote, space, double quote. But again, now I'm getting a problem because I'm trying to bring together now three values, so I'm now missing another ampersand. So that's what I'm going to put in here. So bring the first name and bring back a white space and bring back the last name. So now I have the first name and the last name of my student. So let's keep it moving here. What else do I want to know in this application? Well, for me, I would like to know for the subtitle of this gallery, I would like to return the grade level that they are in. So I'm going to come up to my formula window at the top here. And instead of this item.student email, we have a column called the grade level column. So this item.grade level. Picture perfect. However, in your galleries, you might bring back values that your users don't know what the value means. It might be a number. What does that number stand for? Is it money? Is it a grade level? Is it an ID number? Whatever the case might be. In this case, this stands for my grade. So what I would like to do is hard code a label to be printed in front of this. So just like we've done earlier, I'm going to go to the front of this formula. I'm going to hard code, so I'm going to use my double quotes, grade level, double quote again, and notice I put that space in between, and then an ampersand. And now I have the grade level being returned. The other thing to note, if you're newer to the PowerFX language, it does not matter how much white space you have in between your formulas, as well as you can put your code on multiple lines. So take a look here, I'm just putting these on multiple lines. I can tab over, nothing changes about what's being returned. But if I come over here and click on Format Text, this will make the formula in the Power Apps way of what they think is the easiest way to read it. And so this is what they write here. So you have that Format Text option there for you. All right, so now I've got the title, subtitle, and again, I can make these values bigger. So if Jack Peterson, I don't think that's large enough, I can select Jack Peterson, which is the title control, come on over to the properties panel, and I can make the font like a 16 font. And then when I hit enter, that makes it bigger. And then I'm going to also take my grade level, bring it a little bit down. I'm going to have to make this title control a little bit bigger so we see the full thing. And maybe I want to make the grade level like a 12 font size. So feel free to design however you want to, but notice as I'm doing that, it's starting to take up more real estate. So if I need more real estate to show my values, I just hit that template cell icon edit, and I can just drag this down a little bit, and then I can start to maneuver where I want things to be. So I'm just doing a little bit of maneuvering here. All right, so the next thing is, what if I don't like the way that these values are being returned? So what if I want to sort these values? So I want to say, hey, bring back based on the grade level, or I want to see the earliest grade level first and the latest grade level last. Well, that's where we get into our sort function. So with my whole gallery selected in the items property, I'm going to come up here to my formula bar, and in front of students, which is my data source, I'm going to put in the function called sort. So sort will take a data source, which is my student's data source, and I say, how do I want the students to be sorted? So I can put in a comma. I can go, let's do it based on the grade level. All right, so that's the expression, that's the column to do it over. Then as you take a notice in this formula, it's giving me all of my parameters. Give me the source, done. Give me the expression to do it over, done. When I'm ready to move to the next parameter, I put in another comma. What order do I want this in? Well, let's say I want it in ascending order. Then I close this off, and now we see grade level 1, grade level 8, and then pre-K. Now pre-K is showing up here because it's not an actual number, so it's going to do it by numbers first, and then it's going to do it based on that text label. But what if you're like, well, I want to do this based on a different column? Well, all you have to do is change that column that you want in here. All right, so sort it however you would like to. So maybe I don't want to do it on grade level. Instead, let's say maybe I want to do it based on the student name. So I can come in here and put in the student name. So I can come in and start typing in the student name. Actually, we can go first name here. So first name, and let me get the IntelliSense to help me out here. So students, I think we got first name here. First name. And actually, let's see, do we have first name? There it is, first name, it just wasn't coming up. And then let's say again, I want it in ascending order. So we can sort these records however we want to. And technically we can also, which I'll show later down the road when I have more records, how I can sort these based on multiple columns. Instead of using a sort function, I would use the function called sort by columns. Now the next thing I like to do, and you get this when you're using a Canvas app at the regular Make.Power apps, but you usually get a separator here so that you see the individual, kind of these individual lines in between all of your records. And that's what I would really like to see here. So because I don't have that, I'm going to insert my own rectangle. So I'm going to come to my template cell, all right, going to select that template cell, and then right in here, my template cell, I'm going to insert a rectangle. So when I click on insert up here at the top, I'm going to choose insert rectangle. And now we can see that this rectangle has now been inserted. Once I have that rectangle inserted, I'm just going to start to make some modifications. So I'll bring it down here, make it kind of small, just so it shows up. And if I really want to get really detailed about that height of that rectangle, I can come over here to the right hand side of my properties panel, and let me re-expand, let me collapse this formula window, and over here there's a height, so I'm going to change it from a height of 13 to being a height of 2, so it's not as big and jarring here. Now I have it set to a height of 2, and then I can just bring this on down to the bottom, and now we're seeing we get that separator within. Now notice that my rectangle is currently not taking up the whole width of my gallery. So if I want to do that, I can use some responsive controls here in order to get that done. So with that rectangle still selected, if I want the whole width of this to take up the entire gallery, what I can do is with the rectangle selected, I can come on up here over to the width property in my property drop-down window, and I'm going to say, hey, instead of 610, which this might change because I might make the gallery smaller down the road or bigger, I'm going to say, let's use the width of the gallery no matter what it is, and let's always make that the width of my rectangle. So instead of a hard-coded number, I'm going to say, use gallery, or sorry, galbrowse_students.width. And as I do that, now notice that it takes up the entire width. And so if I make my gallery smaller, it goes smaller, it will go bigger with that rectangle. So that's how I make this responsive. I'm actually going to make this a little bit smaller now. Now when I hit play up here in the upper right hand corner, this is how I preview the app. Now notice everything is looking pretty good, which is great. But what if I want to change the color? So it's got that default color on it. Let's say I want to use one of my variables that we used a little bit earlier in our other episode. Let me click Don't Show Me This again. All right, so I'm going to come over here, going to select my rectangle, and then I'm going to change the fill color of this rectangle. So instead of that default color that it has, I'm going to say let's use one of our variables. So I'm going to go with my variable accent. And so now I'm getting that green, which are my JWJ colors. So now when I come on over, ooh, I don't like this. Might be hard to see, but as I'm hovering over, it looks like the color changes, and I don't like the fact that the color is changing. So how do I fix that? Well, it's not too difficult. So I'm going to change rectangles property. I'm going to come back over here, and in the property drop down up at the top, there's also a property called the hover fill. So the hover fill is saying what color to use when we hover over it. Well, I don't want the color to change. So I could put in the var accent again, or I can use another function called self, which references the current control I'm on. So I'm currently on the rectangle control tab. So it says, hey, you're referencing a control. All right, what do you want to bring back from this control? So I'll go dot, I want the regular fill color. So I don't hard code this one in. You might say, why not just put in the var accent? Well, if I put var accent in here, and then later down the road, I remodify the color to like red. Well, when I go back to play the app, if I go and hover, it's going to use var accent, even though I changed the original fill color to red. By using self.fill, it's always going to reference the fill color no matter if I change it or if I don't change it. So I'm making this easy for myself down the road in terms of my design changes. But let's make sure this works. So I'm going to hit play. As I hover over, nothing is changing. So I like this. This is looking good. All right, now that we've got my rectangle separator in here, I've got the height the way I want it, what else can we do? Well, the next thing that I can do here is I can take this gallery and put more controls inside of it. So I'm going to select that template cell one more time. And let's say that I want to put in the parent's email address. So I'm going to move this up just a little bit. Again, design it however you want to here. We won't get too much on making it pixel perfect for the video so it doesn't take too long. But now that I have the template cell, I don't have it selected anymore. Let me do it one more time. So template cell selected. I'm going to go up to the insert ribbon, or I could go to the insert section on the left-hand side, and I'm going to put in another label. So when I choose label, because I was in the template cell, this label is now part of the entire gallery. Every single one gets it. And now I want to change this to the parent email address. So instead of this item.student identifier, I'm going to bring back the parent email. And as we do that, notice we now have the parent email address. But I'm going to kind of make this a little bit better so it's now lined up accordingly. So I think it's looking pretty good. I've got the student name, the grade level, and the parent's email address. One of the other things that typically we like to do here, let me hit play. Oh, it looks like my rectangle has gone away here. So let's come back into that template cell. And let me get back to my tree view here. And let me go into edit. And let me make this a little bit smaller here and click on that rectangle. And now notice that the height has changed to 2. I need to make it just a little bit bigger here. And let me change this to like a height of 4. All right, it's looking pretty good. All right, so I like it. Now, the next thing that we can do here is we can now search over these records if we want to. But you just noticed, I don't know if you noticed, we noticed I have a problem. I changed the template cell height, and all of a sudden the rectangle disappeared. I don't want to have to manually change that every single time. So is there something different I could do to where I make sure that that rectangle is always going to show up? Well, I could use another responsive control, and that's what I'm going to show you here next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that rectangle one more time, and I'm going to come on over, and I'm going to go to the Y property of the template cell, which is set to 119. So notice if I make this 100, it moves it up. Okay, so it's always going to be set for 100, which means if I take that template cell and I make it bigger, the Y property is always going to stay at 100. Well, I really just want it to be at the very bottom every single time. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select this rectangle, and for its Y property, I'm going to say I want to use the template height of my entire template itself. So gal browse students, so that's the control, dot, let's get its template height. Now when I put in the template height, it sets it at 165. So when I hit play, we'll see now we see that it's at the bottom of the gallery, which is picture perfect, but does that change it if I change the template cell itself? So if I come to the template cell and then I make my template cell smaller, notice now how it's always moving with it on my own. All right, so that's how you make sure that it's always going to move, because we set the Y property to the height of the template cell. All right, and I'm just going to move this over here a little bit more. So the last thing I want to show in this video, and this will conclude episode number 3, is I want to put in the ability for my users to search. We only have 3 students now, but in reality, we're probably going to have a lot of students in here. So a typical ask of Canvas apps is, can I search over my records? And that's what we're going to do. So in order to do a search, I need to add in a control for my users to type in to search for a certain record. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to my Insert dropdown, and I'm going to choose a text box. This is an input control that allows for users to type things in. So I click on text box. I'll bring this over here. Here again, maybe I want my text box to always be the same width of this gallery. So with the text box selected, I'm going to rename it first. So I'm going to call this INP for input, and I'll do something like INP search student. And then for the width of this text box, I'm going to come on down, and instead of it being hard-coded at 320, I'm going to say, again, always look at my gallery width and make the width of this search box the exact same. So galbrowse students dot width. And as I do that, now it's the same width. So if I come over just to prove, if I select my whole gallery, I make the gallery bigger, notice that my text box for the searching is now bigger as well. So again, that was on the text box, galbrowse students dot width. Now not the last part, the next thing is, when you put in a text box, it always comes with a default value, and it's called text box. So when I start to set up the search command, it's going to search for a record called text box, which we do not want. So we want to wipe out the default value. All right, so that's one of the big issues I always see when people try to do searching. They forget to wipe out the default value over here on the right-hand side. But then we're like, well, what the heck does this thing even being used for? Well, that's where we come into our placeholder. So for my placeholder value, I'm going to do something like search for student. And when I have that in, now we can see search for student is here, but this formula is not going to be used. What we put in the placeholder will not be used once we set up the search capability. So how do we do the search capability? Well, when I was first learning, I thought that I should put the search function on the search box, but in fact, we need to put the search function on the control that has the data that we're trying to search over, which in our case is going to be our gallery. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to select this whole gallery, our galbrowse students. We currently have it being sorted based on the first name. And again, we could change that if we want to. But in front of the sort function, I'm going to add in the search function. So we're going to search. Well, what's your data source? Well, my data source is the sorted records of my students that I've defined. So that is the source. So now I put in a comma, and now I decide, okay, where's the search text coming from? This is again why I like to rename most of my controls I put into my Canvas applications. So let's search over that input control. So INP search student, which is a control. We see that it's now highlighted in green saying this is what you're currently referring to. What do you want to refer to? Well, I'm going to say dot. I want to refer to the value that someone has typed into this input. So dot value. So that's where the search is coming from. So now I got the search text, comma. Now I choose, well, what column are we trying to search over? Well, in my case, I just want to search over the first name. So I'll choose the first name column, close that off with the parentheses, and now we see, does this in fact work? So I'm going to hit play here. So I'll search for a student, I'll put in the letter A, and notice when I do that, any first name that has the letter A being occurred, it's going to show up. If I type in an F, now anything with the letter F. But what if we want to search over the first and the last name? Well, not hard to do whatsoever. So I'm going to close out of the preview here, bring this on over. I'm going to select my whole gallery, And I'm just going to add in at the end of my search command, if I put in a comma, I can now say, well, let's also look at another column name. And in my case, I also want to use the last name column. So I'll choose the last name column as well. So search over that source based on the value from the input control and look in the column first name and the column last name. So now if I hit play and I type in, I'll zoom in over here, I type in the letter E, well, everybody has a letter E. If I type in an S, well, here's S for Jack Peterson. So that's how you can get your search to work and search over all the records that you want to. So for right now, that is where we're going to end this episode. So we've learned how to use a gallery, put multiple controls in the gallery, change what values are being returned, how to bring back multiple values for the same control, also how to search over our records, and how we can make these controls dynamic, where they reference other controls in the application and uses their properties for the property that you're currently on. So this is episode 3. We've got a lot more to go through as we continue to make this app, so hopefully you're enjoying this series. And if that's the case, then stay tuned for over the next few weeks, and episode 4 will be dropping out very soon. Thanks so much.